Okay, well, good morning, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Now, I'm going to cover a lot of territory in 20 minutes, so I'm going to really be charging through this, but I'm trying to open up a lot of rabbit holes which you can dive down into more detail at some other time. So I'm going to be talking about the 4 great challenges on the road to 2030. Now, there's a phrase in evolutionary biology called a punctuated equilibrium. And it only happens at times of very great change. And it's when a species, instead of developing in a linear path, breaks into 2 and develops into 2. And as I say, it only happens at times of great change. Well, I think real estate is exactly in this moment at the moment. We are having a punctuated equilibrium, and it's all going to come to a head by 2030. Now, 2030 is only seven years away. This was 7 years ago. Prince died, George Michael died, David Bowie died. Game of Thrones started. We did Brexit. Trump was elected and Korea was blasting missiles out there. Feels like yesterday, doesn't it? But that's all the time we've got until we hit 2030. And that is 2030. 2030 is a brick wall, and we are hurtling towards it. And if we hit it, it is really, really going to hurt. And it's going to hurt unless we deal with these 4 great challenges. So this is a boom time for prop tech. This is a boom time for technology. But first challenge is we have to decarbonize real estate. Second challenge is we have to adapt to the move to hybrid, remote and distributed working. Then we need to work out what are we going to do with a flood of obsolete buildings, and how are we going to save our cities from the consequences of the above. So let's start with decarbonizing real estate. So according to the IPCC synthesis report beginning of the year, viability of humanity living within planetary boundaries rests on the actions we take in the next 7 years, 2030. To keep within the 1.5 degrees limit, emissions need to be reduced by at least 43% by 2030. 43% reduction by 2030. So, what role do we play in all of this? Oops, this is where it all goes wrong. Because we are responsible in the built environment, 38% of total emissions, 36% of energy consumption. And to align with the net zero scenario, carbon emissions from building operations need to more than half by 2030 again. But following the easing of COVID-19 restrictions in 2021, energy demand in buildings increased by nearly 4%, the largest annual increase in the last decade. So we're supposed to be going that way to half. We're not. We're still going in the wrong direction. But the sticks are primed. Make no mistake, one way or another, there are very big sticks about to be wielded onto the built environment industry. And it's all around the world. In Local Law 97 in New York, if you don't meet 40% carbon reductions by 2030, they're going to send you a very, very, very big bill. The European Green Deal, 55% by 2030. Similar is going to happen. Massive renovation wave across Europe going on as well. UK Climate Act says we're going to be net zero by 2050, and of course we've got the ME standards, but at the moment 85% of commercial properties in London do not meet the standards that we are expecting to be in place by 2030. 85% do not meet the standards we expect to be in place by 2030. So there's going to be huge penalties. Either someone's going to send you a very big bill, or they're going to do worse than that. They're going to stop you renting your assets, which takes value from 100 to 0. This rule is real. It really is real. But of course there's upsides to all this. Energy efficiency means you lose less energy, so it's cheaper. Sustainable buildings are the buildings of choice. If you want to finance a building, if you want to finance a building or sell a building, or frankly lease to a quality customer, you have to have a sustainable building. Green premiums are very, very real. They do exist. There's supposed to be about 14% in across London and the UK at the moment. But the bigger issue, I think, is brown discounts. It's going to be losing loads and loads of value by not meeting the standards we need to get to. Boom time for PropTech, because the only way we're going to get there is we need these big sticks, we need carrots, and we need a ton of technology. Challenge number 2, hybrid working. It's worthwhile thinking back to what things were like in 2019. What was an office for in 2019? It was actually quite easy to work out. Physical space where employees would go, primary location for work, critical component to the corporate culture, central hub of business for corporates and for investors. They were appreciating assets with stable incomes. We knew what offices were all about in 2019. And the same applied to employees. Somewhere to meet their friends, places to network, build relationships. It's where resources were. They gave you structure, and it's where you could do socializing and team building. But we all know there were very considerable downsides at the same time. People hated commuting in 2019, and they hate commuting now, and they're not going to stop hating commuting. People really didn't like being distracted in offices, having interruptions in offices, didn't like the noise in open plan environments, didn't like the lack of privacy in small space, smaller offices, they didn't like being constrained, made it difficult to balance work and personal life, and it was easy to feel like work was taking over your personal time. These were very real, and they existed before, and they exist now. And then, of course, boom, the great black hole that was COVID happened. And then what? There were all those concerns. Immediately, employers started thinking, well, what's going to happen to productivity? How are we going to manage people? How are we going to make sure people can collaborate and communicate? What are we going to do with technical issues, all broadband and VPNs and hardware, and how are we going to manage work-life balance and all that sort of stuff? But you know what? All of this turned out to be much ado about nothing. For good companies, they had no problems dealing with any of these. Bad companies had problems dealing with all this stuff. If you hear a company moaning about people in the office and not being happy and whatever, it's because the management's not very good. It's as simple as that. Good companies manage all this stuff. But the most important thing is employees learn 2 things, and they cannot unlearn these 2 things. The first is that commuting does not need to be a daily fixture throughout your working life, and that choice and flexibility is absolutely life-altering. They're not going to unlearn that. So this is challenge number 2, because this is what everyone wants. And they know it's possible because they did it for 2 or 3 years, and they're not going to give it up. But they've also learned what they would like to do, and mostly people want to work in some sort of hybrid fashion. There is absolutely no going back. We are not going back to 2019. But hybrid is hard. It was easy when we were all at home, and it was easy when we were all in the office. When we're all over the place, it's much harder. So we need to not only re-engineer our real estate to cope for the different types of working, we actually need to re-engineer the workflows of our companies to take account from we are no longer an office-centric company. Hybrid means the demand for offices is and will continue to change. It also means the link between reimagined real estate and reimagined companies will grow. There's going to be a stronger connection between the real estate companies that really lean into providing what the modern company wants and those modern companies. And you're going to see a lot of connection between the best tenants are going to go to the best providers of space. What's the role of real estate in all of this? I don't know. But real estate industry is not what it used to be. Is this a technology question? Is it a human question? Is it what? I don't know. Challenge number 3, obsolescence. Now there's 2 routes for obsolescence, and they actually come as a consequence. Challenge 1 plus challenge 2 has led to challenge 3. 2 ways to obsolete property. You've either got an unsustainable building and no economically viable way of making it sustainable, or it's not fit for purpose. It's literally space which is incapable of providing the workplaces that the market actually wants. Cushman's wrote this report a few months ago. Obsolescence equals opportunity. They did it for the US and they did it for Europe, and the numbers are quite stunning of it. In the US, upwards of 25% of office stock throughout the country is growing increasingly undesirable and will need to be reimagined and made relevant for the future. 25% of 5.6 billion square feet. What they also said was essentially this bottom bit, 25% is obsolete now. The next bit, 21%, you're going to need to spend quite a lot of money. So that's 46% of the entire US office stock is either already obsolete or it's potentially obsolete. That is a lot of space. But who cares? It's the Americans. Trouble is, we've got the same problem in Europe. We actually have more really good space. So this top space is space that is fit for purpose through to 2030. So it's sustainable and provides the spaces people want all the way through to 2030. So we're doing better in Europe for that. But we already have 14% of functionally obsolete space, and we have a big bit in the middle of sort of mere space. It's all right. Going to need quite a lot of work, but it's not great. So there's a lot of obsolescence going around. But the point is, we know what people want. We know how to solve this. People want more choice and they want more flexibility. They want less but better space. They're concerned about their health and well-being. And really, we should be thinking about taking the office to the worker and not the reverse. People want amenities. They want employee experience. They want to earn the commute. Well, actually, I must say that earns the commute. People want top-class integrated technology, and they want it everywhere, and they want it in everything. And absolutely, sustainability comes at the top. There's really no point about thinking of anything unless you can get to sustainable buildings. So what are we going to do with all this space? Well, we can reposition, repurpose, refurbish, or demolish it. Please don't demolish space unless you absolutely have to. We've got to stop demolishing 30-year-old office buildings. Some space can be repositioned. Some of the quite new spaces can be brought up to scratch, but frankly, there's not that much of it. So we're going to do a mass of repurposing and a mass of refurbishing. Now, the point here, and this is the great opportunity, this is not a game for cookie cutters anymore. In the real estate industry, you used to be able to get away, you just did whatever the BCO told you to do. That'll do, that's a prime building, just give them that, done. You can't do that now. You've got to be much more imaginative. You've got to be more creative, more innovative, more visionary. This is a market for the visionary people, the innovators and the creative, and one for the technologists, because none of this is going to be possible without a ton of technology. And again, if you're anything to do with technology, it's absolutely boom time for PropTech, because you need carrots and sticks and a load of technology. So we then get to challenge number 4. How are we going to reinvigorate our cities from the consequence of all that we talked about so far? So cities have real problems. Cities are steering through real challenges, economic challenges, real estate challenges, and social challenges. Cities are under pressure. So what do we need to do? Well, I went back to the famous Steve Jobs quotation where he was asked, what does he know about technology? This was when he first came back to Apple, and he did an Ask Me Anything. And someone got up and said, what do you know about technology? You don't know about Java, you don't know about this, you don't know about that. Why should we be pleased that you've come back? And you could see, because he wasn't the most calm person in the world. You could see him getting angrier and angrier, but doesn't say anything for about 5 minutes. And then he goes into this fabulous 5-minute speech, which you can see on YouTube, and he starts with, and he said it really slowly, you've got to start with the customer experience and work back to the technology. The technology is secondary to the customer experience. And this is exactly the same in real estate. If we want successful real estate now, we have to start with the customer experience. The customer experience is everyone who uses our real estate. If they don't enjoy it, if you don't give them a good user experience, they don't need your product anymore. They can go elsewhere. So we should be starting with customer experience and working back to the real estate. This is the most important slide in my deck, I think. If we're going to reinvigorate our cities, you have to think, what does it feel like to be in a great human-centric city? So if you lived in a great, or worked in a great human-centric city, it should make you feel safe and secure, connected and engaged, healthy and happy, inspired and creative, empowered and included. Those are the outputs of a great city. If cities want to sustain themselves, if cities want to remain successful and important in an increasingly distributed world where we don't have to be there, they need to think of those outputs. That's what cities have to do. And that's a huge challenge for the visionary, creative, innovative people that are going to swarm around real estate the next 10 years or so. How are we going to do that? Fits into 4 buckets, really. We need lots of sustainable development, so we need to worry about carbon emissions, we need to worry about active transportation, walking, cycling, etc. We need to be big on community inclusion, so we need to encourage distributed work. We need to encourage work going where it can be done most successfully, but we also need to incentivize people to come back into our cities. Because the great thing about great cities is the centre of great cities is great. It's a fantastic place to be. So it doesn't matter if they work there, but we want them there. We need to embrace technology, promote innovation, foster entrepreneurship. Cities need to be innovative. They need to have a foot heavy on the pedal of innovation. And they need to over-index on culture and recreation. So it's not just about business, it's not just about technology, it's about the culture and the recreation. This is just a fantastic place to be. I've got everything I want. I've got theatres, I've got music, I've got museums, I've got football, I've got sports, I've got everything. We need to really support cities in supporting culture and recreation. And again, to do all of that, you need a ton of technology. So what's the conclusions of all of this? Anyone remember this? Steve Jobs used to do it at the end of his big talks each year. He did this with the iPhone, went through the whole thing, an hour and a half, and then he went, there is one more thing. And then he went and introduced the iPhone. Well, the one more thing on top of the 4 challenges we've got is, of course, generative AI. Burst onto the scene November the 30th last year. ChatGPT went from 0 to 100 million users in 3 months, fastest growing technology of all time. Generative AI is a general purpose technology. The combustion engine is a general purpose technology. The internet is, electricity is. It means a technology that is everywhere. This isn't a point solution where you're going to use it or you might use it, but you're not going to use it. Everyone is going to use this in absolutely everything. Gates talked about it as the development of AI is fundamental as the creation of the microprocessor, the personal computer, the internet, and the mobile phone. It will change the way people work, learn, travel, get healthcare, and communicate with each other. And he's not wrong. Gates has often been wrong about lots of things, but he's certainly not wrong about this one. So, with all that taken into account, what are our real conclusions? Sustainability is a killer app. Sustainability is going to create and it's going to destroy value at an absolutely unprecedented rate. The opportunity to lose money and make money because of sustainability, because of doing the right thing, is immense. 2030 is an absolute killer date because that wall exists, and all around the world 2030 targets are in place. So unless they get booted down the road, that wall's going to be there. And even if it gets booted down the road, it just means that wall is going to be bigger and nastier just a couple of years down the road. Hybrid remote distributed work is here to stay, and it's a forcing function. Forget any ideas about being as we were before. Lean into this new world because we need the spaces and the real estate that is appropriate for that world. So workplaces must change and companies must change. We must change the way we run our business, our workflows, and we must change our real estate. And obsolescence really is everywhere, either because it's unsustainable or because it's not fit for purpose. Now, this is a massive bug or a huge feature. Again, like sustainability, obsolescence is either going to wipe you out or it's going to make you a fortune. It's going to be the opportunity of a lifetime. So, do we refurbish or repurpose? I think you've got to think in terms of designing for people. We haven't got time for it now, but there are 7 trends that people want. We need to design for people, not investors. For investors to get what they want out of real estate in the future, real estate industry needs to think of people first. Think of people first, then you're going to get successful investments. Cities are absolutely vulnerable. Cities do die. We forget the history of cities, but there's no God-written law that, for instance, London is going to be successful forever. Might not be, or any other city. You have to start with the customer and work back from there. In everything. Whatever you do, start with the customer, work back from there. And it's boom time for PropTech because it's absolutely needed everywhere. So the point is, this wall is real, but as the American poet Robert Frost said, the only way out is through. You've got to find a way through it. The end, as they say in Disney.